This video shows the installation of the Falcon shocks leveling system on Ford F-150 trucks. It fits all models from 2015 on except the Raptor. Changing the front shocks requires removal of the front strut assemblies. Begin by disconnecting the tie rod. Unbolt the brake line brackets and disconnect the ABS line from the brackets. Remove the bolts connecting the brake caliper to the knuckle. Do not let the caliper drop, but hang it off to the side. Do not disconnect the brake line, and make sure you do not twist or pinch the brake line. Remove the rotor. Disconnect the ABS sensor by removing the bolt and then sliding the wire under the backing plate. Disconnect the upper control arm ball joint from the knuckle. If you need to free the ball joint, loosen the ball joint nut, but do not remove. Use a hammer and strike the knuckle to break it loose. Remove the nut on the sway bar link, but there is no need to completely remove the sway bar link. To remove the axle shaft, remove the dust cap and then the axle nut. Remove the nuts connecting the shock to the lower control arm. Carefully lift the axle shaft out of the knuckle until it clears the knuckle. Do not damage the seal inside the knuckle. The seal is part of a four-wheel drive system and also helps with bearing lubrication. Damaging the seal will cause leakage and could disable the four-wheel drive and cause bearing damage. To remove the strut, remove two of the upper nuts and loosen the third, but do not remove it. Use a pry bar and push down the lower control arm until the strut studs clear the lower control arm. Remove the final nut and the strut should drop out. Before installing the front Falcon shocks, you will need to determine the desired ride height. These shocks have four options: stock, medium, level, and heavy accessory. The shocks are preset to level. This setting will eliminate the need for leveling spacers. The stock setting will leave the truck at factory ride height. Medium sets the ride height halfway between stock and level, while the heavy accessory setting is designed for those with heavy bumpers, winches, or other accessories. This setting will maintain a level ride height even with increased weight. Place the front bump stop onto the shock shaft with the wide end towards the top. After the ride height has been determined, have a qualified mechanic separate the spring from the strut assembly using a spring compressor, and install the spring onto the Falcon shock body. The bar pin aligns with the center of the gap between the two front studs, and the grease zerk faces towards the wheel. Apply some anti-seize and run the shaft nut on, then release the compressor before torquing to 40 foot-pounds. Use a pry bar between two of the upper studs to limit rotation. It is very important that you do not over-tighten this nut. Over-tightening can damage the shock. Reinstall the strut. Again, make sure the grease zerk faces the wheel. To help with installation, we replace the mounting studs with a nut and bolt combination on the bar pin. Use the provided M12 by 70mm hex cap screws and install from the bottom. Use the provided nuts as jam nuts on the bar pin bolts. Torque these to 75 foot-pounds. Reassemble the IFS components starting with the axle shaft. Again, be careful not to damage the internal seal. Align the splines and then tighten down the axle nut to 30 foot-pounds. Don't forget the dust cap. Tighten the sway bar link to 52 foot-pounds. Tighten the strut nuts to 52 foot-pounds. Pry the upper control arm down, position the upper ball joint, and install it onto the knuckle. Tighten the nut to 46 foot-pounds, and then go an additional 200 degrees. Reconnect the ABS sensor. Replace the rotor and then the brake caliper. Again, be careful not to twist or pinch the brake line. Use red thread lock on the caliper bolts and tighten to 184 foot-pounds. Reattach the brake line brackets and the ABS line. Reconnect the tie rod and tighten this nut to 85 foot-pounds. That finishes the front end. Now we'll move to the rear. Install the roost guard by removing the 3 bolts on the shaft end. Slide the shaft into the roost guard. If you push down on the roost guard and bow out the sides, it should go on smoothly. Align the 3 holes, use blue thread lock, and install the bolts. Tighten to 30 inch-pounds. Falcon shocks for the F-150 are available in a sport or a sport tow haul option. While the front shocks remain the same for both kits, the rear shocks for the sport tow haul feature a 3-position fast adjust knob that allows you to select from one of the 3 options: comfort and control, moderate tow haul, or heavy tow haul. Installation for the sport and sport tow haul rear Falcon shocks is relatively the same. Begin by removing your current shocks. Orient the Falcon shocks with the shaft down and the Falcon sticker and fast adjust knobs facing out. The Falcon logo on the roost guard will face front on the passenger side and rear on the driver's side. Torque the top and bottom nuts to 66 foot-pounds. To install the rear Falcon bump stops and strike pads, remove the old bump stops. Install the Falcon bump stop mounts using the provided M10 bolts. Lubricate the Falcon bump stop and install by pushing up and twisting. The strike pad attaches to the axle. On the driver's side, remove the bolt connecting the brake line bracket to the rear of the axle. Keep the self-tapping bolt, it will be reused. Slide the strike pad into place and tighten the provided bolt. Move to the front side of the axle. There is an untapped hole that aligns with the strike pad on the axle. Use the self-tapping bolt you removed here. That's it for this install. Thanks for watching. Now go see what Falcon shocks are made of.